You know what's fascinating? While nearly 1.5 billion people are super excited to tune in for the World Cup in a few months' time, there's a huge population of people who truly could not care less. And I'm not talking about people pretending not to care just to get attention. No. I'm talking about people who see the World Cup hype the same way you might see, I don't know, competitive lawn mowing, for example. They have absolutely zero emotion. And here's what people miss. For some people, the World Cup just doesn't register the same way at all. What do I mean? Well, let's get into it. First thing you need to understand is that caring about football isn't some default human setting. The brain doesn't come out of the womb ready to scream at a TV over some grown men running after a small ball. What's actually happening when people get obsessed with something like the World Cup is this weird mix of tribal loyalty and fake bonding with people who have no idea you even exist. And yes, there's actually a term for this. Psychologists call it basking in reflected glory. Basically, your brain can give you a dopamine hit when your team wins, even though you did literally nothing except lounge on your couch and scream at the TV. For people who don't care about the World Cup, watching that frenzy happen to other people is like, wow, that's nice. Anyway, what's for dinner? There's actually some interesting research here from the Journal of Consumer Psychology that found that our brains crave very different levels of excitement. Some brains crave high-intensity, emotionally charged experiences, while others find that same intensity genuinely unappealing. Neither is superior, they're just different frequencies. So, when someone tells you they don't care about the World Cup, they might not be trying to be contrarian or unconventional. They might just be someone whose nervous system prefers lower intensity experiences. The chaos and emotional stakes of a 3-hour game with constant emotional highs and lows genuinely might feel exhausting rather than exciting. And here's where it gets psychologically deep. Humans are tribal by nature, right? We survived as a species because we formed groups and competed against other groups. Football tapped into that primal group identity thing. I know that sounds dramatic, but the emotional response to my team won versus their team won follows a lot of the same patterns as the ancient in-group versus out-group dynamics. But not everyone experiences that pull with equal intensity. Some people find their sense of community from yoga groups, book clubs, weird little online forums, or anything that doesn't involve grown men crashing into each other over a ball for entertainment. They're not rejecting that sense of community itself. They've just found it elsewhere, in spaces that don't make you memorize halftime stats, argue over whether that was a catch, or obsess about every play call. Now, let's talk about something that might explain part of the disconnect: the locus of control. Now, let me explain. There's this popular concept in psychology where people develop either an internal or external locus of control. Basically, do you tend to focus your energy on things you can influence, or are you comfortable investing emotionally in things outside your control? Most people are either one or the other. Just think about what happens when you watch a football game. You're screaming at a screen. You're wearing your lucky jerseys, doing your secret rituals, and yelling like you're the 12th man on the pitch, but none of it moves the ball a single inch. It changes nothing that happens on that field. Some people are totally fine with that. The emotional journey is the point for them. Others might find that profoundly unsatisfying. They'd rather spend emotional energy on things where their effort could create a direct outcome. The profound thing about this theory is that neither approach is wrong. They're just different psychological tendencies. And oh, let's not forget the elephant in the room: overstimulation. Seriously, nobody ever talks about how life already feels like a non-stop attack. Work emails, WhatsApp messages, group chats blowing up, bills due, traffic, bad news, and some app reminding you that you're behind. For a lot of people, the World Cup is just another thing trying to hijack their attention and drain their emotional energy. Like, can we get a break? This is especially hard for people who are wired a little differently, the ones psychologists call highly sensitive, which is apparently about 1 in 5 of us. For them, the World Cup games are basically a 3-hour-long non-stop stimulation that leaves them mentally drained for days. The lights blazing, the crowd roaring, the constant chanting and waves. What feels like an exciting game to some can feel like a full-on endurance test for others. And here's another thing that's stressful about these games. Nobody really talks about how much people vary when it comes to their ability to handle uncertainty. There's research showing that people differ dramatically in how comfortable they are with unpredictability and uncertainty. Who wins a football game is fundamentally uncertain. You never know what's going to happen, and that's supposed to be part of the thrill. But for people with lower uncertainty tolerance, that same unpredictability might feel more like stress than excitement. They're not enjoying the suspense. They're just uncomfortable the entire time. And when you combine that with the fact that the outcome literally doesn't matter to your actual life, sitting through 3 hours of manufactured tension for zero payoff starts to feel less like entertainment and more like voluntary anxiety. It's the same reason some people love horror movies and others can't stand them, or how some people enjoy plot twists and others just want spoilers. Different nervous systems have different relationships with stress and uncertainty, even when it's just for fun. And then there's this big deal everyone makes about tradition and ritual. The World Cup isn't just a football game anymore. It's this massive cultural production with the commercials, halftime show, all the themed snacks, the whole circus. If football doesn't really do it for you, all that extra hype just makes things worse. It's like being surrounded by people pretending to be super into something you just don't get. And you're supposed to join in, talk about the ads, and pretend you care. It feels kind of fake, honestly. You end up watching everyone else get worked up over something you find totally random and pretty much stressful. And that weird disconnect can leave you feeling like the only person in the room who somehow missed the memo. It's not just boring, it's kind of lonely in a way that's hard to explain. But let's be real about something else. Sometimes there's no deep psychological explanation. Sometimes people just don't like football, the same way some people can't stand anchovies, hate black licorice, or think oysters are gross. We've become so obsessed with psychologizing every difference that we forget that humans just have different tastes. Shocking, I know. The person who doesn't care about the World Cup might be deeply passionate about photography, learning new languages, ranking every coffee shop in their city, or literally anything else. And that preference doesn't need a neurological justification. The expectation that everyone should care is honestly weirder than not caring. What I find most interesting is how uncomfortable it makes people when someone says they don't care about the World Cup. There's this immediate defensiveness, like you've insulted someone's mother. And that reaction tells you everything about how sports function as identity markers in our culture. When you reject the World Cup, some people hear it as rejecting them, their values, their entire social world. It's not actually about the game. It's about belonging, shared experience. And maybe there's also this quiet anxiety that if too many people stop caring, the whole thing starts to lose its cultural power. So, if you're someone who doesn't care about the World Cup, there's probably a mix of factors at play. Maybe your brain just prefers things a little calmer. Maybe you prefer investing energy in things you can directly influence or control. Maybe you're just not wired to get excited about big sports moments. Maybe you find the manufactured spectacle exhausting. Maybe uncertainty feels more like stress than fun. Or maybe you just genuinely find it boring, and that's the entire explanation. All of those are completely valid ways to exist. And if you're someone who lives for the World Cup, that's equally valid too. We don't all have to experience the world the same way. And honestly, that's probably the only reason society functions at all. You can have 1.5 billion people losing their minds over a football game, while another massive group is perfectly content doing literally anything else, even just lounging on their couch. And somehow, we all coexist. That's it. That's the whole point. If this hit home for you and you want to support these psychological deep dives, hit that subscribe button. I genuinely appreciate you.